and welcome to another live reading. Today I am going to be reading Chapter 2 from Jordan's Arrow, Book 2 in the Jordan of Algorand series. And as always, before reading Jordan's Arrow, I want to give spoiler alert. The things that you hear in this segment will give you a little look into the book, but will also be a bit of a spoiler about some things. So if you haven't read Jordan's World yet, keep that in mind. Okay, let's go ahead. Chapter 2, Serpent's Teeth. Saskia helped Jordan to stand up. "It is late," Saskia said, looking up at the moons and stars. "I need to find my daughter and go home." "I will go with you," Jordan answered. "We both know exactly where she is. I will retrieve my son and do the same." "Jordan," Saskia started to say, then stopped herself. "What is it, Saskia?" "Even if you are immortal," Saskia gently gripped Jordan's shoulder and looked into her eyes, "I will be your closest friend, closer than family, as long as I live." Jordan smiled, but Saskia's words tore into her. She clasped her hands around Saskia's and nodded her head. "Always." It was all Jordan could manage in response, her voice strained. Saskia walked ahead, but Jordan looked down at her palms. Next, she peered back at her friend. Jordan imagined Saskia gradually changing over the next 4 or 5 decades, eventually resembling Jordan's grandmother and great-grandmother. Jordan attempted to humor herself, thinking Saskia would be just as clever, feisty, and strong, even at her eldest. Yet no matter how close to reality that could someday be, Jordan felt pieces of her heart break at the mental sight of being with Saskia at her moment of death. Saskia continued walking, but Jordan stopped, unable to pull away from the phantasm her fears were manifesting. Jordan imagined participating in Saskia's burial ritual, herself still looking the same age as she did now. Would Bhopal still be alive then? Would her children? Mere feet away, Saskia realized her friend was no longer following. She turned to Jordan. "Jordan, your son needs you." The words "your son" immediately snatched Jordan's attention away from her visions. Speculation and fear were luxuries, and they would have to wait. "Do you know where he and Mosca are?" "I think I have a pretty good idea, yes." "You are going too high," Mosca warned, her arms and legs wrapped around the tree's trunk. "We should head back down." "It is close. Come on." Arrow reached down with his left hand as his right held on firmly to a branch above him for support. Mosca let him pull her up. The trunk branched outward to the left and right, creating a stable area wide enough for both of them to stand or lean on. From their vantage point on this wooded giant, the entire village could be observed, along with the rest of the mountain leading to its peak. Peering out, it was an impressive vista not far from the celebration grounds. She heard leaves rustle nearby, but couldn't see movement or anything else out of the ordinary. Remembering her parents' training, she tensed her body, trying to be ready for anything. That's when she felt the akasva wrap itself around her leg. Mosca stifled her gasp, but Arrow heard her. He turned his head and stiffened when she mouthed the word akasva. He nodded once, his expression somber. Moving only his eyes, he located the narrow but long serpent, whose glistening skin was a sickly green-gray that bore thin black stripes etched down its body like tattoos. Its head was small, but its mouth was open and almost disproportionately large, fangs ready to strike, to drive its venom into its prey. It made a sharp, internal screeching noise meant to frighten away anything threatening it. Every Makta youth was taught the dangers of the mountain creatures, including the akasva. Hesitation or a wrong action meant death. Faster than Mosca's eyes could follow, Arrow's hand grabbed the reptile directly beneath its head and yanked the 2.5-foot beast from her leg. The akasva flailed, stretching its neck and worming its way from Arrow's chokehold. It looked determined to bite him in the next few seconds and return its attention to her. It never got the chance. Within heartbeats, the snake ceased all movement and sound, transforming into lifeless blue crystal in Arrow's hand. Startled, the boy dropped the creature and it fell to the ground, shattering on impact. Mosca was astonished. How did you do that? I do not know. You saved me, she exclaimed. Thank you. We should climb down, he suggested. Mosca nodded. Soon they had descended to the ground. Mosca searched below the tree, and seconds later she squealed in delight, squatting down to pick up what she had seen. She excitedly showed it to Arrow, cupped in her hand, the crystallized head of the Akasva, frozen in its final expression. May I have it? She asked. It is a snowfire gem, Arrow replied hesitantly. Chiefess said we do not take them. But it was an animal. Chiefess also said our kills are ours, so it is your choice. Will you give it to me? Arrow pondered her request. You really want this? Yes, I do. It is special, Mosca announced. I will make it a necklace, like yours. Arrow looked down at his own new necklace, Mosca's gift to him. Then he looked at her and nodded. Okay, you can keep it, he replied. She smiled but then hesitated. For a brief moment she wondered if she might have made a mistake in this request, but when she looked on this prize once more, her happiness banished the thought. Saska cleared her throat. She was about 20 feet from her daughter and Arrow, looking as intimidating as possible. Inwardly, she was somewhat amused as both children turned, startled, and scared by her presence. Gemta! Mosca exclaimed. You two are up very late. The celebration is over. Everyone has gone home, Saska spoke loudly enough for Jordan to hear, never turning her attention from the youths in front of her. Jordan, driven by determination, made her way to them with surprising swiftness considering her very ponderous state. She picked Arrow up and hugged him tightly, her concern not needing words to be felt. We are okay, Gemta. Do not worry, Arrow said. You took Mosca up in that tree, right? Jordan replied, her brow furrowed and eyes riveted on her son, demanding the truth. Yes, Arrow admitted, standing up straight like his father. However, his eyes showed regret in disobeying his mother. How many times have I warned you? It is so tall, and there are Akasva. Arrow kept me safe, Mosca blurted proudly. A brief but severe look from Arrow discouraged Mosca from saying anything else. Whether Arrow kept you safe or not does not make it less dangerous. Do you understand? Jordan had crossed her arms over her abdomen with one eyebrow raised in annoyance. Yes, the girl replied. And you, Arrow? Jordan added. Yes, Gemta. We are going home now. We will talk more about this tomorrow, Jordan stressed. Saska put her hand on Jordan's shoulder as she passed by, stopping her. Are you going to be okay? Saska asked quietly. Jordan looked at her with an expression of, I have no idea, and then sighed, lowering her head. The morning sun's light was stark and unwelcome as it taunted Jordan's eyes. Still exhausted, she wanted to go back to sleep. But during her years as a huntress, she had trained her body to wake up at this time, regardless of her condition. And now, despite being 8 months pregnant, she knew she would remain conscious whether she wanted to or not. A cool breeze entered the hut through its open doorway. It rushed over the Kelkano and caused her to pull the fur blanket closer. As she awkwardly rolled to one side, Jordan saw that Bhopal was already up and checking on their son in his Kelkano. Bhopal had also prepared some freshly squeezed fruit juice for her. The tangy, thick, and slightly sweet beverage was refreshingly smooth and nutritious, one of her favorites. Its sight and smell were motivation enough for Jordan to navigate her way out of the hanging bed and get to her feet. She ambled over to the table where a large stone cup awaited, filled with the beverage. She smiled at her husband's thoughtfulness. Dayshan, Bhopal, she smiled. Dayshan, Jordan, he replied. Did you get enough sleep? Jordan's eye roll was its own answer. I will be fine. Bhopal walked over to her and put his arms around her, gently hugging her. Did you get to talk with Saska last night? Bhopal asked. She was looking for you. She found me. Did you know she thinks we are having a daughter this time? Jordan replied, one hand over Bhopal's and the other softly stroking her belly. I hope she is right, but I will be happy either way. That made Jordan smile again. I know. She heard her son half stumble across the floor towards them. When she turned to see him, he was rubbing one eye and looked like he was stifling a yawn. Torcom, do I have to go bathe? Arrow asked, using the Makta word for father. Yes, Arrow. It keeps you clean and builds your strength, Bhopal answered. Funta says he only has to bathe once every 7 moon turns, Arrow rebutted. Yes, and Funta smells like it too, Jordan quipped. Now go, not another word. Arrow obeyed. Jordan elicited a kiss from her husband before he headed outside their hut to join their son. Bhopal, carrying a medium-sized bag containing homemade bar soap, shampoo, a drying towel, and Arrow's change of clothes, led his son to the stream. Torcom, did you do this at my age? Torcomta took you? Yes, your Torcomta was diligent with me and my brothers and sister, Bhopal replied. We never missed a day. If the weather was bad at dayshine, we waited till the storm passed, and if the storm lasted all day, we went at night. After they arrived at the brook and made preparations, Bhopal sternly observed Arrow walking into the waters. They rose to the boy's chest when he was fully immersed. Following his father's routine, Arrow then squatted, fully submerged. As he rose out of the water, he vigorously shook his head. Bhopal handed him the cleansing herbs, and he began to scrub his chest and arms. Torcom, Arrow continued, was Chiefta stern with you? You know your Gemtabana, Bhopal smirked as he leaned forward. What do you think? Arrow gulped. She was more stern than Torcomta? Bhopal nodded. But it was for our good. She had 5 children, all within 1 or 2 cycles of each other. We were challenging to our parents. We worried them many times, like you worried your Gemta last night. Arrow dunked himself again to rinse. Bhopal imagined his son was taking a moment to think of a response before he rose up. You knew that? Arrow asked. Your Gemta tells me everything. I wanted to show Maska the high place. She made me this gift, he crowed, proudly showing his father the Taba stone jewelry. I wanted to thank her. It is good work, a fine gift. I understand, Bhopal acknowledged. But the high place is dangerous. You know that. Yes, Torcom. Arrow looked downward with the admonishment, frowning. Then Bhopal offered Arrow the shampoo and took back the cleansing herbs. I took my share of risks when I was your age, Arrow. How do you think my friends and I found the high place? You were the first to find it? Bhopal smiled. 3 of us set out exploring one day, and we saw the tree. The oldest of us was probably 8 cycles. I was 6. One of my friends, Kisal, started climbing the tree before we could warn her. What happened? Arrow asked. As she was climbing, going very fast, she brushed by a den of akasva. 2 of them wrapped around one of her legs and bit her. What? There was no way we could help her. She passed out and fell. Bhopal shook his head slowly, still grieved despite the passage of time. Kisal was dead before I caught her. That is very sad, Torcom. I am sorry your friend died. It was long ago, son, Bhopal acknowledged, though last night Maska could have been bitten the same way as Kisal. Arrow nodded wistfully, his face paling in response to his father's verbal imagery. Arrow finished rinsing his hair and emerged from the stream. You were fortunate that neither you nor Maska were struck, Bhopal stretched out his hand to give Arrow the drying cloth. I will be careful, Torcom. Good. That is what your Gemta and I hoped for. After Arrow got dressed, he stopped and looked at his father. How often do you think about Kisal? Arrow asked. I will always regret not doing more to save Kisal, Bhopal said. But if I can help save you... Arrow nodded in understanding. Bhopal returned the cloth to the bag. He put his arm around his son, and they returned to their hut. And that is the end of Chapter 2. Thank you for joining me, and we'll see you next time.